Huddled up between stacks of cardboard boxes in that windowless room, I heard my daughter-in-law loud and clear through the Alexa speaker. "That old woman's nothing but a freeloader. Tell her to shut her mouth or dump her in a nursing home. 6 months ago, I sold off everything I had to buy them this big house. I didn't have one tear left to cry. I just stared at the metal box under the bed, the one holding the promissory note secured by this very house, the one they were dead certain I'd already lost." You just heard the gut-wrenching words of a mother. She sold her home and poured everything into helping her child, figuring her old age would finally be safe, only to get shoved into a storage room like some cast-off piece of junk. The cruelest part was that the one cornering her was the very child she carried and brought into this world. This is the kind of thing that happens in real life more often than folks care to admit, and it could happen to just about anybody getting older. Stay with us and watch how this woman keeps her head, finds a way out, and saves herself instead of laying down and taking it. If this hits home for you, don't forget to hit like and subscribe so we can follow every last turn of what happens next. My name is Barbara. I was 68 years old. I'd been widowed for 11 years. And the drop that finally made the bucket spill over came late on a Thursday afternoon, exactly 6 full months after I'd been swallowing my pride and living in my son's basement storage room. When I sold my house in Berwyn, Javier hugged me tight right there on the front steps. His voice thick and shaky like the little boy he used to be, had somehow found his mother all over again after a long stretch of life. "You don't need to live alone anymore, Mom. Come move in here. Sophie and I fixed up a whole in-law suite just for you. Your own room, your own bathroom, nice and quiet. You can even plant something out on the patio if you want." I looked at him, and my heart just went soft. When you get old, one kind sentence is enough to hand over the whole rest of your life to your child. I sold the house, paid the taxes and fees, and had a little over $380,000 left. I gave Javier $300,000 to help them buy a bigger house. On the surface, I told them plain this money was in exchange for a safe place to land in my old age. They were tickled pink, figuring it was nothing but a trusting old mother's spoken promise and nothing more. The day I moved in, Sophie walked me past that room exactly one time. Fresh paint on the walls, cream curtains, a queen-size bed, a cushioned armchair by the window. She pointed around like she was giving a tour to a short-term renter. "It's a lovely room, Mom, but the plumbing crew left the job half done. Just a few days. Please bear with us and sleep in the storage room for now, okay?" Sophie's few days stretched into 6 months. The storage room sat next to the garage, half a step lower than the main floor, with no window at all, just one door connecting it to the kitchen hallway. At first I told myself to let it go. New house, lots of clutter, better to keep the peace. I set my suitcase in one corner, stacked my clothes on a plastic chair, and tried to calm myself by thinking old folks shouldn't be too fussy and make the whole house feel heavy. On the second night, Sophie came downstairs carrying a silver keypad lock. "We're putting this on for safety, Mom. Emma runs all over the place. If she opens this door and gets into my live stream inventory, that could be a problem." I looked up at her. "A keypad lock on the door to the main house?" "Yes, ma'am. You can still press the button from the inside and get out. It's just to keep the little ones from coming down." Javier stood behind his wife, hands shoved in his pockets, eyes avoiding mine. "Just temporary, Mom." I gave a dry little smile. "Sure, temporary." I still remember what that moment felt like. The pain didn't burst wide open. It slid in slow and low, pressing down on my chest with every breath. Like when you hear the tiniest little crack and know the glass is already split, even if it hasn't shattered in front of you yet. My most precious things, old photo albums, the tea set my husband left behind, the wool scarves I knit myself, my medicine box, my papers, all of it got shoved into damp cardboard boxes and stacked beside Sophie's makeup inventory, live sale clothes, ring lights, clothing racks, and sealed shipping packages. My things weren't my things anymore. They'd turned into clutter wedged between the merchandise my daughter-in-law used to make money. The first week, Sophie still sent Javier downstairs with a plate of food at night. "Mom, hang in there, okay? We're stretched kind of thin right now." The second week, she forgot. By the third week, she didn't forget anymore. She had simply decided it wasn't her responsibility. I dug an old mini hot plate out of my suitcase, one I used to take on trips with my husband, plugged it into a loose outlet near the metal shelf, and cooked oatmeal, boiled water, warmed up canned soup. Every time I plugged it in, the outlet gave a faint little shake that made my scalp go cold. I was old, not crazy. I knew full well what a fire hazard looked like. I just didn't have another choice. One morning I heard something heavy dragging across the floor above me, then Sophie's fake cheerful laugh, the one she only used when the camera was on. "Hey girls, welcome back to my studio." I froze beside that hot plate. Studio. At noon, when the house was empty, I climbed the stairs. The door to the room they'd promised me was cracked open. The queen bed was gone. The armchair by the window was gone. In their place stood a beige backdrop, 3 lights, a product shooting table, and shelves lined with handbags, lipstick, and workout sets. On the wall hung a little neon sign that read, "Sophie Collective." I stood there nearly a minute. My throat turned bitter. That room had never been mine. From the jump, it had been a prop, bait to lure me out of my old house, strip the cash from my hands, and shove me into a place nobody had to see. That night, they invited me upstairs to eat with them for once, because one of Javier's regular business contacts had stopped by to talk. I sat at the end of the table while Emma ate and watched her iPad. Sophie talked and talked, the way some people do when they're trying to stuff cotton into the cracks inside themselves. She went on about Emma's private school, the pressure of expenses, the mortgage interest, how terrible the economy is right now, how a young family had to hustle to stay afloat. I laid my fork down. "The room upstairs is a studio, not a room under plumbing repair. When am I moving in there?" Javier lowered his head. The steak on his plate was almost untouched. "Mom." Sophie cut him right off. "What's that supposed to mean?" "I asked when I get the room you promised me." "You really think this whole house revolves around you?" She slammed her fork onto the plate. The metal clanged so sharp Emma jumped. "Do you have any idea how much Emma's tuition is every month? Do you know what property taxes are on this place? Insurance, food, gas, electricity, everything under the sun. You live here, you eat here, you use everything here. We're busting our backs over here." I looked her dead in the eye. "Where's my $300,000? The air at the table turned to ice. Javier spoke softly. "Mom, don't do this in front of Emma." "So it's easier behind my back?" Sophie gave a nasty little laugh. "That $300,000 helped us close on this house. This house is where you live too. You keep acting like we stole from you. I'm sleeping in a storage room. It's temporary. It's been 6 months. Do you have any clue how much income I'd lose without that studio? Do you know what we have to do to keep this life for Emma?" I turned to Javier. "You think that too?" He rubbed a hand across his forehead. "Mom, I just want peace in this house. Sophie's not wrong when she says we're under pressure." My heart dropped, not because I was surprised, because those words sounded like a door shutting, and it was my own son's voice closing it. That night I lay on the folding mattress listening to packing tape rip upstairs, listening to Sophie filling orders, the little chirp of sale notifications, Javier pacing back and forth, and the low hum of some photo printer somewhere above me. I stared up at the low concrete ceiling and understood I wasn't a mother in that house anymore. I was dead stock. Something shoved into the dark so long as I didn't take up space from the things that still brought in money. 3 days later, the first letter disappeared. I always waited for the mailman and picked up my own mail. That day I moved slower because my knee was aching. By the time I got upstairs, Sophie was standing at the kitchen island tearing open one of my envelopes. "What are you doing?" She looked up, not startled in the least. "I thought it was house mail. It's from my bank. My name is on it. If it's all financial stuff connected to the household, then we should be transparent with each other, Mom." I snatched the letter out of her hand. Retirement statement. I hadn't even opened it yet, and I could already see one corner torn crooked. From then on, opening my mail became a bold-faced habit. Some days it was a hospital letter, some days an insurance notice, some days a statement from my emergency savings account. Every time I reacted, Sophie just shrugged like she was dealing with a cranky child. "You live here. We need to know so we can budget." One evening, near the end of the month, she came down to my room, stood between 2 stacks of boxes, arms folded over her chest. "Starting next month, you're going to pay 70% of your pension for utilities." I thought I'd heard her wrong. "How much?" 70%. And that's me being generous. I want to see the actual bills. Sophie gave me a crooked smile. "So you don't trust us?" "I trust numbers. You're living in our house. I gave $300,000 to this house. That was you helping your son. That doesn't mean you live free forever." I looked at her a long time, then said very slowly, "I'll pay a fair share if you show me the bills. Every single one." Her face changed on the spot. "Well then, don't blame us if we have to rethink things. You know how cold Chicago gets in winter. Running central heat down to this storage room costs money, too. Maybe we cut that off and save ourselves a chunk." A chill broke loose down my spine. That kind of cold is worse when it comes from words, because it means the person saying them has already weighed you in their mind and decided you're just another expense that can be trimmed. I didn't sleep that night. I pulled the blanket to my chin, listened to the heat kick on and off, and felt my insides twist themselves into knots. I dug through my old paperwork, reading every copy, every form, every account number. Then I remembered the power of attorney I'd signed over a year earlier when I was in the hospital with pneumonia. Back then Javier had cried and said he needed the right to act for me if there was ever an emergency. The next morning, I called the bank from my old phone, curled up in the corner of the room so nobody would hear me. Once the employee verified my information, she said something that turned my blood cold. "Ma'am, there were 2 attempted transactions this month from the person authorized on your account, but the system held them because the amounts went over the threshold for extra verification." "Who made the requests?" "Javier Harlow." I squeezed that phone so hard my knuckles hurt. "How much was he trying to take?" "The first attempt was for $40,000. The second was for $12,000. I hung up, ears ringing. My son, who used to cry when he crashed his bike and chipped a baby tooth, who used to be scared of the dark, who once called me in the middle of the night in 8th grade because he'd forgotten a presentation at home, was now somewhere in that house trying to drain the emergency fund meant for the tail end of his mother's life. The next morning I got up at 5 a.m., put on the nicest clothes I still had pressed flat enough to wear, stuffed my papers in my purse, and took a cab to the bank branch in Evanston. I didn't tell a soul. Didn't leave a note. I sat up straight in the back seat, watching gray, freezing Chicago pass by the window while my gut twisted like someone had wrung it out by hand. The bank employee was a black woman, maybe around 40. She looked at me, then at the forms, then back at me. "You want to revoke the entire power of attorney?" "Right now." "Are you concerned about financial exploitation?" I hesitated for exactly 1 beat, then told the truth. "Yes." She stopped writing. "I can bring over someone from Elder Support Services if you'd like. I want this handled first." 30 minutes later, the power of attorney was revoked. I closed the joint account. I moved every last dollar into a brand new account in Barbara Harlow's name only. I asked for flags on any large transactions. I set a new security code. Javier would never guess the date my husband died, not my son's birthday like it had been all those years. When I walked out of that bank, my knees felt like wet paper. I sat on an outdoor bench for more than 10 minutes, purse clutched in my hands, watching people walk by. A 68-year-old woman taking her money back from her own son. Sounded half ridiculous, half humiliating. And the worst part was knowing I had handed him that knife myself in the first place. I got home close to noon. Sophie was recording a video in the kitchen. Javier wasn't there. I quietly went back downstairs. Less than an hour later, the door flew open so hard the lock smacked the wall with a sharp crack. Javier charged in. "What the hell did you do?" I sat on the mattress and looked up. "You're talking to your mother. The bank called me. You revoked the POA. You moved all the money. You think I'm a thief?" His face was red as a burn, his eyes swollen, whether from lack of sleep or panic I couldn't tell. "You tried to pull $40,000 out of my fund. You don't understand. I was just trying to float us for a little while. And the other $12,000 was just floating us too?" "Mom, let me explain." "I'm listening." He swallowed hard. "The house is tight right now. Sophie's got some things that needed to be paid fast. I was going to use it for a few days and put it back. I wasn't trying to hurt you." I laughed, one short, dry little laugh that sounded strange even to me. "You lie awful bad, Javier." His eyes reddened right away. "You always think the worst of me. Have you ever trusted me for real, not once?" That was the dirtiest hit of all. The minute he ran out of ground, he crawled right back into the role of misunderstood son. I'd fallen for that trap my whole life. I lowered my voice. "Yeah, maybe I'm old and imagining things. I'm sorry." He froze. I saw the relief wash right over his face. One apology from me was all it took to set him back in the clean spot, the innocent one. I just wanted to help the whole family. From now on, I'll take care of my part myself. Easier that way. He let out a breath, nodded, and even patted my shoulder like he was doing me some grand kindness. "Get some rest, Mom. Let's not make this bigger than it is." The door closed. I sat there a little longer. Then I bent down, dragged the small metal box out from under the mattress, and brushed the thin layer of dust off the lid. Inside were old papers, copies of contracts, a few photographs of my husband, and one thing Javier thought I'd lost a long time ago. I didn't open the box yet. It wasn't time. But my fingers touched the edge of that paper inside, like I was laying a hand on the last break left between me and the cliff. After the bank mess, Sophie changed tactics. She quit coming at me about money straight on every day. Instead, she started doing something filthier. She started making me look like a truly confused old woman. One morning, the reading glasses I'd left on the plastic bin beside my mattress vanished. I tore the room apart for nearly an hour, my head pounding so bad I couldn't even read the labels on my medicine. Around noon, Sophie finally came downstairs holding the glasses between two fingers like she'd picked up something dirty. "You left these on the bathroom sink upstairs." Emma almost stepped on them. "I didn't take my glasses upstairs." She raised an eyebrow. "You forgot." 2 days later, it was my blood pressure medicine. I remembered clear as day that I had put the bottle in a red zip bag with my blood pressure cuff. The whole bag disappeared. I ripped through every box, sweat crawling down my spine. When Javier got home that evening, Sophie told him right in front of me. "I told you, didn't I? Your mom's starting to leave things all over the place. Today, her medicine and those glasses went missing. What if Emma got into them?" Javier looked at me tight-faced. "Mom, you've got to be more careful. You're hiding my things." Sophie laughed out loud. "Listen to yourself. Does that even sound reasonable?" Another night, I was looking for the key to my suitcase when I heard a tiny click. Javier was standing outside the room holding up his phone. "What are you doing? If you keep panicking like this, I need to record it so I can ask a mental health doctor. I'm just worried." I stood there still as stone. He was filming his old mother digging through boxes in a storage room like I was some kind of case file. The shame didn't stay on the surface anymore. It pushed deep into my chest till it hurt to breathe. Then came the mini fridge. I'd saved up my own money and bought a little used refrigerator from a neighbor. I kept it under the steel shelf in my room. I put yogurt in it, vegetables, a couple cans of soup, deli meat, milk. One morning I opened it, and a sour stench hit me so hard I stepped back. Everything inside was warm and soft. The plug had been pulled. I was crouched down, cleaning spoiled food, when I heard voices and laughter upstairs. Sophie brought 2 neighbor women down. "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry about the smell. My mother-in-law's getting forgetful these days. She keeps putting food in strange places and letting it spoil. We're really trying our best." One woman peered at me with that look of pity mixed with suspicion. The other one covered her nose. I lifted my head. "You unplugged my refrigerator." Sophie sighed like a saint bearing a burden. "There she goes again." I looked at Javier. He stood on the stairs holding a coffee mug, silent as always. That silence made me shake harder than Sophie's voice did, because it told me my son had picked a side a long time ago. He just hadn't needed to say it out loud yet. That night, with that stale, sour smell still hanging in the room, I sat curled up on the mattress holding the old iPad Javier had once synced to the house smart system. Back when he first set it up, he'd linked Alexa so I could video call Emma, play music, get reminders for my medicine. After I got shoved downstairs, I barely used it, but I still kept it out of habit. That night, while I was digging through the settings to turn off some annoying notifications, I found the synced device history and audio log. I tapped it. Sophie's voice came blasting out, clear as a bell and sharp as broken glass. "That old woman's nothing but a freeloader. Tell her to shut her mouth or dump her in a nursing home." My heart kicked so hard my ears started ringing. I dragged the timeline back. Javier's voice came next, quieter, hesitant. "That's going a little far." "Far? If you want to keep living in this house, then pick. Either she disappears, or the bank takes the whole damn house." I sat frozen. The iPad felt hot in my hands. I opened more clips. In one, Sophie said they needed enough proof that I was losing my mind so they could get a conservatorship. In another, she called me a parasite. In another, Javier was asking a lawyer if there was some cheap way to put his mother in a public nursing home without having to pay too much. The air in that room got thick enough to choke on. I bent down, pulled the metal box out from under the bed and laid it in my lap. The metal was cold as ice. Inside, along with the other papers, was an old USB drive and the original promissory note Javier had signed when I gave him $300,000 toward this house. My husband used to say, "If you help your child, you still put it on paper. Trusting family is emotional. Keeping proof is survival." Back then, Javier had begged us not to let money come between mother and son. I went soft, but my husband made him sign anyway, and even had the lien recorded against the future house in Cook County. After my husband died, I tucked it away. Years later, Javier asked about it. I told him it probably got lost in the move. He believed me. Or wanted to. I sat there in the dark listening back to every recording, every word about dumping me, every plan to swallow up what little I had left. My stomach knotted over and over. My fingertips went cold and stiff. The pain of old age ain't just your bones and joints. It's the moment you realize you're old enough to be treated like an object, but not dead soon enough for people to stop resenting how long you take up space. Through that iPad, I heard their next plan too. All she's got to do is sign a couple papers, or get declared incompetent, and that's it. What if Mom figures it out? You're acting like she's that sharp. I shut the screen off. In the pitch-dark room, the heat clicked off. I sat up straight and told myself something that sounded strange, even coming from me. All right then. If they wanted to put on a show about the confused old lady, I'd give them exactly the part they were looking for. At this stage of life, there's no pain quite like finding out your own flesh and blood has been plotting against you. If the women and mothers watching this are fully behind Barbara taking back control of her own life, go ahead and give this video a like. Your support right now is what keeps us going as we watch this mother turn the whole game upside down. Starting the next day, I began forgetting harmless things. I asked Sophie what day it was, even though I'd just looked at my phone. I put a spoon in the knife drawer and muttered that old age must really be getting me. I repeated myself in front of Javier. I deliberately called Emma's school by the wrong name. Every time I did, I saw Sophie's eyes light up, not with pity, but with greed. She thought the prey was getting weak. When Javier wasn't around, she quit pretending nearly as much. You ought to learn your place. When it's time for the nursing home, don't make everybody miserable. I lowered my head and answered in a shaky voice. I just want to stay near my son. Your son still has to live his life. This whole family can't go down because of you. Alexa recorded every bit of it. Every night, I wrote down the time, the words, and the behavior in a little blue notebook I hid inside my pillow. Older people being underestimated do have one advantage. Nobody believes they're still sharp enough to remember. I needed somebody from outside the house. Somebody who'd look at papers and speak the language of law, not tears. I thought of Arthur Bell, my old neighbor from Berwyn, a retired IRS auditor, widower, black coffee drinker, the kind of man who marked files with sticky notes in every color under the sun. He'd helped my husband go over tax things when he retired early. A stubborn old mule, rough around the edges, but clean. I lied and said I had a doctor's appointment so Sophie would let Javier drive me to the train station. From there I took a cab to the old diner where Arthur liked to sit every Tuesday morning. He looked up at me and frowned. "Barbara, you look like you really have been sleeping in a damn storage room." "I have." Arthur set his coffee down right away. "Sit. Start from the beginning." I talked for nearly an hour. No dramatics, no crying. Just one fact after another, every dollar, every missing letter, every recording. He never interrupted. When I laid the metal box on the table and handed him the original promissory note, he put on his glasses and read every page slow and careful. Javier signed a promissory note for $300,000. There's interest. There's a security interest in the house bought with the loan. It's recorded with the county. And here's the original. He looked up at me. "Barbara, this thing is fully valid. I need to know for sure. If they sell the house or refinance, your claim gets paid according to the priority set in the filing. Depends on the primary mortgage paperwork too, but they can't pretend this debt doesn't exist." I sat still, crushing a paper napkin in my hand. Arthur tapped a finger on the document. "Javier knows about this? He asked about it years ago. I told him I'd lost it." "Good." "Good?" "Because that boy thinks you're some helpless old woman locked in a basement, while you're holding the last rope tied around that house's neck." He said it, then ordered me more coffee like he'd just given me the weather instead of the only way out left in my whole life. That wasn't all. When I showed Arthur the strange letters and a few screenshots from Sophie's phone and social media, he told me to hand over my daughter-in-law's accounts too. Barely 20 minutes into digging around, he muttered a curse under his breath. "Your daughter-in-law's got a GoFundMe up." "I'm sorry, what?" "GoFundMe. She's claiming her elderly mother-in-law has dementia, is destroying property, and is causing financial and emotional hardship for their young family, asking the community to help them get through a hard time." My face burned hot with shame. She's using me to beg for money? She's already got pledges for over $8,000. Arthur turned the screen toward me. There was Sophie, clutching Emma with a sorrowful face and enough syrupy writing to make your stomach turn. She'd even written that she had done everything she could to care for me with love. I sat there reading it while my gut twisted shut. People were sending her money because they thought I was some pitiful burden. She was feeding off my back in every sense that phrase could carry. Before we parted, Arthur kept it short. Don't get reckless. You need more visual proof, more legal footprints. You've got recordings. Good. Now make outside eyes see it for themselves, then hit. I nodded, clutching that metal box so hard it hurt. When I got home, I heard Sophie live streaming before I even got through the door. Girls, this set is so soft. I stepped inside. She glanced at me once, the smile still glued to her face for the camera. Javier was out. Emma was in class. Sophie was taking orders while getting annoyed over somebody griping in the comments. She muted the mic for 1 second and turned to me. "Mom, go clean up the studio for me. There's hair and dust all over the floor." I nodded. Okay. I carried a bucket and rag upstairs. The room that should have been mine was bright, spotless, and smelled like vanilla candles. The armchair by the window had been replaced by a dress rack. I got down on my knees and started wiping the floor, my back stabbing with pain. Downstairs I could hear Sophie's voice shift into that irritated tone of hers. "If you're not buying, quit yapping." I looked at the cream-colored sofa at the edge of the camera frame. Then I stood up, carried the bucket past it, and right then my foot slipped. Dirty water splashed all over the sofa cushion and part of the rug. Sophie shrieked. "Jesus, Lord Almighty, what did you do?" I acted startled and flustered. "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see." "Didn't see what?" "You ruined the exact spot I film in. What the hell is wrong with you?" "I'm sorry, I'll wipe it up right away." "Wipe your head. Do you even know how much that sofa cost? You're doing this on purpose because you're pissed off, aren't you? You think crying and playing victim makes everybody stupid?" She was standing right there in frame, face red as a stoplight, forgetting the laptop was still open, forgetting the webcam light was still on. I could see the little blinking dot by the screen. It wasn't full frame, but Sophie always kept a faded side camera box open during her sales to keep the stream feeling live. I lowered my head and stammered. "I truly didn't mean to." "Oh, for God's sake, why don't you just die already so this house has one less problem?" The second those words came out, Sophie froze. She whipped around toward the laptop and scrambled to shut something off. Too late. A line like that only has to slip through for half a second before the drama-hungry hounds online tear it to shreds. I kept wiping, my hands shaking just enough to sell it. Inside, I'd gone cold. When people look down on you hard enough, they show their true face even in front of the very camera they use to make money. That night I sent Arthur the timestamp of the live stream. He texted back one line. "Good. Now wait for the legal hit." It came faster than I expected. Ever since Sophie started demanding utility money, I'd quietly been taking pictures of that storage room, the keypad lock, the loose outlet, the mini hot plate, the windowless sleeping area, the stacks of inventory blocking the path. Arthur told me to call 311 anonymously if I wanted an inspector to come out. I did it on a Monday night. I didn't give my name. I just said there was an elderly person living in a storage space that wasn't up to code, with a fire risk and no way out. 2 weeks later, one morning after Sophie had slept in from a late-night sales stream, the doorbell rang. I answered it. Standing there was a woman around 50 in a city jacket with a building department badge. Beside her stood a younger person holding a clipboard. We received a complaint about a non-compliant space being used as a living area. I opened the door wider. "Please come in." Sophie came running downstairs halfway through, hair unbrushed, face puffy, forcing out a social smile. "Oh, I'm sure this is a misunderstanding. I'd like to see the lower-level area," the female inspector said. not smiling one bit. I led them down. The second she stepped inside, she stopped and looked around. Boxes stacked above head height, a bed jammed tight beside steel shelving, a hot plate plugged into a flimsy outlet. No window, no second means of egress, no separate smoke alarm. I stood next to my mattress like living evidence. Sophie started talking a mile a minute. "Well, my mother-in-law is only staying down here temporarily while the upstairs room is being repaired." The inspector turned and looked at her, her voice cold as a steel blade. "You don't need to explain. My dog wouldn't sleep in a place with this little ventilation, let alone somebody's mother." Sophie's mouth snapped shut. Javier had just pulled into the driveway and came rushing down. "What's going on?" The inspector pointed her pen through the space around me. "What's going on is that this elderly woman is being kept in a space that is in serious violation of safety code. Storage rooms are not bedrooms. No egress window, blocked pathway, fire hazard, unsafe electrical setup." Then she slapped a red tag right on the door frame, shutting that space down. Sophie's face turned ghost white. "But then where is my mother supposed to stay?" The inspector looked square at Javier. "That's a question you should have asked yourself before letting her sleep in here for however long this has been going on." Javier opened his mouth and shut it again. I looked at his face and saw the real panic finally show through. Not because of me, because of the fine, because of the paperwork. Because once the government steps inside, other things have a way of following. That's exactly what happened. Later that afternoon, a letter from the HOA showed up. They'd gotten multiple complaints about the house being used as a warehouse for business inventory, delivery vehicles coming and going, overloaded storage, noisy live streams. Sophie tore through the house like a madwoman. "Who reported me? Who said something? Who's screwing me over?" Javier yelled back. "You're on live every damn day. Boxes all over the garage. Who the hell wouldn't notice?" "So, this is all my fault?" "Not all of it, but quit acting like this house is innocent." The two of them started fighting right above my head, footsteps pounding, things getting dragged and knocked over. I sat on the mattress with a cup of warm water in my hand, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't shake. The law has a sound all its own. It doesn't scream. It knocks, opens a folder, posts a notice, then leaves greedy people to drown in the very papers they signed. I was still thinking through my next move when that evening Javier came downstairs holding a stack of papers. He squatted in front of me, eyes red and wet. "Mom, help me just this once." "I didn't take the papers." "What is that?" "It's just changing the beneficiary on your life insurance, so we can use it as collateral for a bridge loan, cover the fines, straighten out the house. Once everything settles down, I'll change it back." I looked at him and felt my throat close up. Even now, after all of it, he still thought I was dumb enough for that. "You want me to sign?" "Just one spot, that's all. The family's right on the edge." Slowly, I pulled a medical paper from my cardigan pocket, one I'd had printed at the community clinic the day before. It was nothing but a routine cognitive check form with a few harmless notes. I laid it in front of him and let myself look tired. "Sorry, honey. The doctor just diagnosed me with severe cognitive decline. The court froze all my accounts and signing rights to protect me. My signature's trash now." Javier's eyes flew wide open. "What? Terrible, isn't it? I'm upset too." He snatched up the paper and scanned it fast, his face changing color. He wasn't a doctor. He didn't understand all of it, but he understood enough to panic. More important than that, he was scared that if I was really being flagged as vulnerable, every dirty thing they'd been trying to do could come under a microscope. He shot to his feet. "Since when?" "I probably told you already. I forgot." I looked up at him with the blankest, foggiest old lady eyes I could manage. He took one full step back. That step told me I had hit the softest spot in him. That night, Javier and Sophie fought until nearly midnight. I didn't have to creep close, because the little recorder I'd hidden in an old tissue box picked up every word. "You're such an idiot. Why did you let her go to the doctor alone? How was I supposed to know she'd pull something like this? How the hell are we supposed to do a conservatorship now? If the system flags her first, we're screwed. You think I wanted this? You're always weak. I told you from the start we needed to force her to sign faster." Then came the part that turned my stomach over. "That predatory loan is due, Sophie." "I know. It's been 3 months. 3 months of interest unpaid. The house is headed for foreclosure. I told you, the GoFundMe wasn't enough. The lawyers are bleeding us dry, and there's all the credit card debt. You blew money on Aspen, Scottsdale, Napa. You posted all those stupid smiling pictures online, and now you're asking why we're here. That was for my brand. Your brand is dragging this whole family into the sewer." I had to put a hand over my chest after hearing that. Their greed was really just a lousy shell covering a mountain of debt waiting to swallow that house whole. 3 months behind on interest. GoFundMe money used to patch lawyer bills. Fancy social media trips paid for with predatory loans. I wasn't the burden anymore. I was the last money source they hadn't managed to devour. The next morning, Sophie dropped the polite act altogether. She stormed into my room, hair pulled tight, eyes red and wild. "That's enough. Haven't you wrecked my house enough?" I sat on the mattress folding a towel. "What did I do?" "You called inspectors, you pulled this dementia crap, you messed with the bank, you trying to put us out on the street? I've been sleeping in a storage room for 6 months. If life's so hard here, then get the hell out. Tonight would be even better." She grabbed a cardboard box beside me and hurled it at the wall. The lid burst open, and my wedding photos spilled all over the floor. One small picture frame cracked at the corner. My chest cinched tight like somebody had grabbed it in a fist. "Pick that up," I said. "Who the hell are you ordering around?" "Pick it up." She kicked the box again. "You think you own this house?" I hit the shortcut on my phone in my pocket. Once. Then again, just to make sure the line connected. Sophie didn't hear a thing because she was too busy hollering. "An old woman like you ought to be grateful for a nursing home. You cling to your son like some parasite and still act like you've got dignity." I looked straight at her. "You've just said enough for the police to hear." "What?" Right then, the dispatcher's faint voice came through from my pocket. I hit speaker just loud enough. 911. "What is your emergency?" Sophie went pal. 20 minutes later, the police arrived. They looked at the room, looked at the red tag, looked at my belongings thrown everywhere, listened to the recording I'd just saved, listened to the Alexa clips too. One female officer stood beside me a long time, asking gentle but direct questions. "Do you feel financially threatened or pressured to leave this residence?" "Yes." "Has anyone withheld your paperwork, opened your mail, or tried to use power of attorney to access your funds?" "Yes." Javier stood in the doorway, gray-faced. "Officer, this is just a family misunderstanding." The female officer cut him off. "Family is not a license to exploit an elderly person." Sophie still tried to argue. I never laid a hand on her. "You don't have to hit someone for it to be abuse," the officer said. In the end, Sophie was handcuffed and taken out on charges tied to the destruction, threats, and a report to Elder Services over financial exploitation and cruel mistreatment. She twisted around and yelled at Javier while they led her to the car. "Are you just gonna stand there? Say something." Javier stood frozen, lips moving but nothing coming out. That same night, the officers helped me secure an emergency protective order. It was only a thin sheet of paper, but it felt as heavy as an iron door slamming shut. They told me that for the time being, Sophie was not allowed to approach or harass me at that residence. When they left, the house was quiet, in a way it had never been. I carried my old blanket upstairs. Each step felt heavy as a whole lifetime. I passed the studio that used to be my room, past the kitchen, past the stone island where Sophie used to open my mail, and walked into the living room. I turned on the heat. The warm air came through so softly it made my eyes sting. I boiled water, made myself a cup of black tea, and sat down on the sofa Sophie had screamed about when I got it wet. 6 months. It had been 6 months since I'd sat someplace with real light, real warmth, real air. My hands trembled around that cup. Not from fear, from the shock of my body remembering what it felt like to be treated like a human being. Javier stood in the kitchen doorway for a long while before he finally spoke. "Mom, this has gone too far." I looked down into my tea. "No, it's only just come out into the open." The next morning, Javier bailed Sophie out. He didn't dare let her step through the front door because of the protective order, so the two of them stood out in the driveway, screaming at each other while neighbors peeked through their curtains. I sat in the living room without turning on the TV and let their words drift in through the glass. "You have to sell the house. If we sell now, we take a huge loss. If we don't sell, we lose everything." And my mom's claim, "Don't you call me Sophie if you're still going to hang on to this mess. Figure out how to stop her." They decided to unload the house fast to stop the bleeding and head off the foreclosure. I knew because Arthur had already started tracking the paperwork and the new listing. He called me first thing Thursday morning. "They're about to close with a bargain basement investor. Realtor's office in Wilmette, 2 p.m. Should I go?" "You shouldn't. You need to." I went with Arthur and the family's old lawyer, Leonard Pierce, the man who had done my husband's will. Leonard was a few years older than me, slightly bent at the back, but his voice was still sharp as a paper cut. When we walked into the conference room, Javier had a pen in his hand. Sophie sat beside him, pale as milk but still trying to hold on to that polished look of a woman who believed she could charm a whole room if she smiled at the right angle. The investor and realtor looked up in surprise. Javier shot to his feet. "Mom, what are you doing here?" Leonard didn't answer him. He opened his briefcase, laid the original promissory note on the table, and turned it square toward the realtor. "I represent Barbara Harlow. Before this transaction moves forward, be advised that any proceeds from the sale of this property must first address the debt secured by this instrument in the amount of $300,000. The realtor picked it up and looked it over, his expression shifting at once. "This has been recorded?" Arthur slid over the county search printout. "It has." Javier collapsed back into his chair. "Mom, you kept this?" I looked at him. "You thought I really lost it?" Sophie lunged forward like she meant to snatch the paper. "This is ridiculous. She's just getting revenge." Arthur stopped her hand in midair. "You touch anything again and I'll report a protective order violation right here in this room." Sophie's face twitched. Leonard went on in the same calm tone. "Further, my client has already forwarded evidence of abuse, financial exploitation, and false statements used in a fundraising campaign to the GoFundMe platform and the appropriate agencies. I'd advise everyone in this room to choose their words carefully." Sophie turned to Javier. "Well, say something." Javier didn't look at anybody. He stared at the promissory note like it was the first mirror that had ever shown him his own face. I opened my purse, took out my phone, and laid it on the table. On the screen were screenshots of Sophie cursing me on livestream, the city's red tag notice, the HOA letter, and the GoFundMe story built on lies. "I've already sent everything." The realtor swallowed hard. Maybe everybody should take a moment and let legal counsel. Before he could finish, Sophie's phone started blowing up. She looked at the screen and went dead still. Then another alert popped up. Then another. I knew right away. GoFundMe had gotten the report. Most likely her account had just been locked or frozen for review. Within minutes, somebody in the neighborhood next door group had reposted the clip of Sophie cuss out her mother-in-law. The internet doesn't care about fairness. It just needs the smell of social blood. And Sophie had brought her own knife. "Good Lord," the realtor muttered, staring at his phone. Sophie stood up. "Undo it. Do you hear me? You're killing this whole family." I answered her evenly. "What family?" That shut her up cold. Because everybody in that room understood that if there'd been even a scrap of family left, they never would have stuffed me into a storage room and started planning how to dump me in a nursing home so they could finish eating through my money. The negotiations dragged on nearly 2 hours. The sale price came in lower than they'd wanted. The bank swallowed most of it. My claim ate into what was left. All the calculations were cold and dry, but strange as it sounds, that coldness let me breathe again. Paper doesn't cry. Numbers don't beg on behalf of family. They just record who owes what to whom. When things were nearly done, Javier suddenly dropped to his knees right there in the office. "Mom, please, cancel the note. I'm begging you. I'm your son." Nobody said a word. The room went so still you could hear the air conditioner blowing. I looked at the boy I'd carried inside me, and I remembered those nights lying in that storage room hearing him help plan the stripping away of my rights. I remembered the way he looked down every time Sophie insulted me. I remembered the 2 attempts to raid my emergency fund. I remembered the life insurance paper he shoved at me while I was sleeping in a space worse than a dog crate. I opened my phone and played one recording. Sophie's voice filled the room. "All we need is enough proof she's losing it, and we can put her in a public nursing home. We keep what's left." Then Javier's voice, quiet but clear. "If we do it, we've got to move fast." I shut it off. Javier lowered his head. Nobody in that room could save him from the sound of his own voice. I looked straight into his wide, staring eyes, swallowed every bit of heartbreak, and cleared away every last excuse about carrying him and raising him. "You called me a freeloader in my own son's house. Well, freeloaders get shown the door. Sign the sale papers. I've got tea at 3 p.m. Javier's lower lip trembled. He looked at me like he didn't even know who I was anymore. Maybe he was right. The mother who would carry him, excuse him, and trust one "I promise" had died in that windowless room. Seeing the son I once held in my arms now down on his knees shaking and begging, I won't lie, someplace deep in a mother's heart still bleeds. But once a glass has shattered, there's no putting it back together whole. Standing at a moral line like this, what do you think about Barbara's decision? If life shoved you up against a wall like that, what would you do? Leave a comment with yes if you believe that punishment was fully deserved, or no if you think that mother was too cruel to her own blood. The sale papers were signed. What came in from the sale covered my principal and part of the interest after the other obligations were handled. Most of what was left got swallowed up by the bank to cover the arrears and the debts. Sophie moved out that very afternoon, hurling suitcases into her trunk like she was throwing in every failure of her own life. Before she got in, she looked at me one last time with hatred and fear mixed together in her eyes. "You'll die alone," I answered her. "I'd rather that than live beside you." She slammed the car door and drove off. Javier stood in that empty house among the pale spots on the walls where pictures used to hang. He looked 10 years older after just a few weeks. I walked past him carrying my light little suitcase. He called after me softly, "Mom." I stopped, but didn't fully turn around. "What?" I really didn't know things would end up like this. The hurt rushed straight into the bridge of my nose. That excuse cut deeper than any insult ever had. Because that's the kind of self-pity people cling to when they don't have the guts to call their own actions by their proper name. You knew. You just thought I'd keep taking it. I pulled my suitcase out the door, never looked back. I moved into a secure senior apartment community out in the suburbs near Skokie. The apartment was much smaller than my old house. No backyard, no front porch. Just one bedroom, an open kitchen, and a big east-facing window. In the mornings, the sunlight spread gold across the wood floor. At night, it got so quiet you could hear the elevator stopping in the hallway. To somebody else, it might have felt cramped. To me, it felt like freedom. I used part of the money I recovered to set up a medical trust and all new directive paperwork. Javier was not allowed anywhere near my medical decisions, financial decisions, or housing arrangements ever again. Arthur sat with me through the whole meeting with the lawyer, grumbling while he checked every line. Folks our age got one job to do right. Don't let your children turn you into a wallet with a heartbeat. I laughed even with tears stinging my eyes. Those first weeks, my body still didn't believe I was safe. I jumped every time somebody knocked hard on the door. If I left my tea tin in the wrong place, I'd panic and think somebody had gone through my things. Some nights I woke from dreams of that storage room wall pressing in toward my face, the air thick and close, my feet unable to find the door. I'd sit up in the dark, reach for the light switch, look around at my little apartment glowing soft and warm, and remind myself that here the door opened, the window showed sky, and nobody had the right to lock me in ever again. Javier texted every now and then. "How are you, Mom? I'm sorry. I'm looking for a place to rent. Can I come talk to you?" I only answered short. "I'm doing all right. Take care of your own life." Forgiveness is something else altogether. It's not the same as reopening the door for somebody who shoved you into a hole. I didn't know yet whether I could forgive. I wasn't even sure it mattered. What I did know was that I would never again let anyone, not even my own son, cross the line I'd built out of my own heart's blood. At the new building, I joined the rooftop gardening club. A few cherry tomato pots weren't anything special, but seeing something grow under my hands without anybody stealing the credit or turning it into a tool made me feel lighter than I had in years. I got to know Mabel in 4C, a widow with a church bell laugh who was always passing around oatmeal cookies. I got to know Doris, a former pediatric nurse who looked straight into your eyes when she spoke, like she was telling you without words that you were seen and heard. The older folks there never asked why I lived alone. They just asked if I liked black tea or peppermint. Old age can be kinder than youth in that way. One afternoon I was watering a few basil pots when Mabel asked me, "You got children nearby?" I paused for just a beat. "Yes, but not nearby in the way you mean." Mabel didn't ask another thing. She just pushed a cookie into my hand. "Then all the more reason to eat." I laughed. A real laugh. Small, but real. That year, winter came early. The season's first snow spread over the parking lot like a wrinkled white blanket. I sat by the window drinking tea, watching the sky brighten. The apartment wasn't big, but everything in it sat exactly where I wanted it. Nobody opened my mail. Nobody touched my medicine. Nobody asked about my bank balance in a voice sweet as syrup. It took me all the way to 68 years old to learn that peace doesn't mean your children keep you close. Peace means your key is in your own pocket, your papers are in your own drawer, and the decisions are still in your own hands. Javier got divorced nearly 7 months later. I found out through court paperwork that got misdirected to an old email Arthur was still watching for me. He rented a tiny room in Des Plaines and picked up weekend work to pay his debts. I wasn't glad to see my son brought low. No ordinary mother would be. But I didn't run in to save him either. Save him once with money, and you open the door to 10 more rounds of exploitation paid for with tears. One early spring afternoon, he stood outside the apartment lobby and called from his phone to say he was there. "If you don't want to see me, I'll leave." I stood behind my apartment door for a long time, my hand cold on the knob. Then I went downstairs. Javier had gotten thin. Old coat, worn shoes, eyes red-rimmed. He stood when he saw me. "I just wanted to bring you this." He handed me a small wooden box. Inside was his father's pocket watch, the one that had gotten buried in all that mess in the storage room and vanished after Sophie threw the boxes. I thought it was gone for good. I found it in an old garage box. I held the watch and my fingers shook. "Thank you." He nodded, lips trembling. "I've been more disgusting than I even realized. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just wanted you to have Dad's watch back." I looked at him. In that moment, I saw two people layered on top of each other. A little boy who once slept holding a ragged teddy bear, and a grown man who stood there silent while his wife locked his mother in a storage room. Both of them were Javier. I couldn't choose the sweet one and pretend the other had never existed. "Fix your own life," I told him. He nodded. "Yes, ma'am." Javier turned and walked away, carrying that worn-down, lonely shadow of himself through the dreary weather without asking for even one comforting word. I carried the watch back to my apartment. When I opened the lid, the hands were still ticking slow and steady. My heart gave a sharp ache, but it didn't shatter the way it once would have. The pain had a shape now. It wasn't that dark, windowless room anymore. It was a scar. It still hurt when touched, but it didn't swallow me whole. My story didn't end with tear-soaked reunion hugs. There was no magical family dinner. No son dropping to his knees and suddenly turning good after one hard lesson. Real life doesn't run that way. Some debts get paid in money. Some get paid in reputation. Some get paid in years spent looking back at yourself and seeing what you turned into. After all that storm and wreckage, I finally understood what it meant to protect myself. Emptying your pockets for your child does not mean turning over your dignity too. A mother's mercy, put in the wrong place without clear boundaries, turns into nothing more than a master key for greed. This story is a work of fiction inspired by very real dark corners in the lives of many older people in America. It's meant to shine a light on financial safety, self-respect, and the boundaries older folks often feel too guilty to set because they're afraid of looking selfish. Laws differ from place to place. Any decision involving money, property, power of attorney, or medical care ought to be checked carefully with qualified professionals. Don't turn anger into reckless action. And don't wait until you're locked in a dark room before you force yourself to look square at what's happening. A lot of people will look at this story and count up how much money Barbara got back, but what she truly reclaimed when she walked out that door was herself. For 6 long months, they tried to turn her into a confused old woman, some leftover burden to be shoved from a storage room into a nursing home to make the finances easier. But the minute she took her papers back and rebuilt her boundaries, she stopped being an old woman led around by her own children. The thing that keeps a mother stuck in pain the longest is hope. Hope is what makes us blind ourselves to being used. Hope is what makes us explain away signs that are plain as day. Outsiders love asking why she didn't leave sooner. Easy thing to say. Harder thing is accepting the truth that the love you feel for your child may not be enough to stop that child from doing evil. The deepest wound ain't being deceived. It's seeing the deceiver's face and realizing it belongs to the child you once rocked to sleep. Barbara rose up not because she hurt less, but because she finally understood something plain and hard. Soft-heartedness doesn't save anybody once they've already reduced you to an item on a ledger. That hard decision carried a bitter taste, sure enough, but it was the only medicine strong enough to keep the rest of her life from being torn into smaller pieces. We can love our children without conditions, but the house, the savings account, and the right to live in safety sure better come with conditions. Greed usually starts small. One moment of giving in. One signature handed over out of trust. One night of mom. Just sleep in the storage room for a few days. Little by little, the boundary gets worn down till we forget we deserve respect too. Barbara lost her old house. She lost the beautiful image she used to carry of her son. But she did not lose her clear mind. She stepped back into the light and lived the rest of her years with her head held high because she came to understand one thing plain and solid. Never beg other people to treat you right. Use the law and your boundaries to require it. Barbara's choice not to forgive and to let her son face the wreckage of his own debt has stirred up all kinds of opinions. Was that legal revenge and that clean break satisfying enough, or for a mother was it too cruel? Leave your thoughts down in the comments. If this story gave you something worth carrying with you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, tap the notification bell, and share this with somebody who needs to hear it. We'll see you in the next story. God bless you.